1970 was a watershed year for Arkansas, particularly, I guess, for the Democratic Party, because it marked the end of the old courthouse machine, conservative Democratic Party, the party of segregation, transitioning into a party of personal and magnetic and progressive politicians. By 1970, Democrats sensed it would be very difficult for Rockefeller to win a third term. But a lot of others sensed also that something different was happening in the Democratic Party. This is one of the largest fields in history. You had former Governor Orval Faubus undefeated in 6 terms. You had the Attorney General of Arkansas, a man named Joe Purcell, the Speaker of the Arkansas House of Representatives from Texarkana, Hayes McClurkin, former President of the Arkansas Bar Association, and a hardware store and local attorney named Dale Bumpers from Charleston, Arkansas, that nobody ever heard of.
I wanted to run, and the field didn't worry me. Orval Faubus had created so much chaos in the state, and I felt frankly that Orval Faubus had set this state back a lot of years. He was a man that I just felt that I couldn't sit home remembering a lot of my father's teachings and allow him to come back to power. I didn't think he could win and I thought one of the big advantages I had was not being known. It's a curious thing in politics. People will vote for somebody they don't know because they feel like he can't possibly be as bad as the ones they do know. My idea was not to overtly jump on Orval Faubus, but to simply say he had his day. And if there's anything Arkansas needs, it's a new day.
Bumpers ran a much better campaign than anyone expected. This, as he calls himself, the best lawyer in a one-lawyer town from Charleston, Arkansas. He turned out to have good abilities on the campaign trail. He spoke well, he related to people well, he was a surprise.
He was the first candidate, I think, in modern times to use television that successfully. He had a kind of a cool presence on television.
Dale Bumpers did television better than anybody up to that time. He was good on television. He was good looking. He understood the medium, I think, and used it very effectively. But you know what gets lost in a lot of this is that Dale Bumpers was very, very good on radio too. He had a very smooth voice, and at the same time he was encouraging on radio and comforting on radio. And he was telling the people of Arkansas, yeah, we can do these things. We can have a better state.
The message simply was, we need to come together, and I will bring us together. Because the Democrats and the Republicans had been fighting, the Rockefeller, the Republican governor, the Democratic legislature. And so he was going to end the divisiveness. And that was his message. But it worked. And on the first election day, Orval Faubus got 36% of the vote. And Dale Bumpers barely squeezed out Joe Purcell for the second spot in the runoff. And that was the end of the race, actually, because in 2 weeks, Orval Faubus did not have time to develop a case that Dale Bumpers was a big flaming liberal, and if he gets elected, he's going to integrate the schools, and he's for busing to achieve racial balance, and he's for all of these things, and he doesn't represent you.
And to be honest, he was probably right. I mean, he was a liberal, particularly compared to Faubus. So it was a pretty tough campaign, but Bumpers pulled it out. I mean, Bumpers, again, with that calm and professional and likable personality of his, was able to look like the reasonable person. And he forced, again, this runoff with Faubus, and he won that runoff.
It was a particularly frustrating campaign for Rockefeller because he had planned to run against Orval Faubus. Faubus had beat him in 1964, and he was determined to get even. This would be the race for both of them.
And then the whole state both the Republicans and Democrats got blindsided by this guy from West Arkansas named Dale Bumpers who came in. So emotionally, intellectually, politically, they were not prepared. The Rockefeller people were not prepared to take on a Dale Bumpers. They had been hoping and assuming that that they'd be running against Orval Faubus. No. It was a different campaign entirely, a different Democrat entirely. They never got their bearings back.
I knew that barring, a really monumental event of some kind, and I couldn't think of what it might be, that I would win that election. As I traveled around the state, people were increasingly gravitating to me. It was a remarkable time in politics in this state. It was something utterly different from anything anybody had ever seen. We had a slogan, which was, I didn't think much of it at the time, but the more I've thought about it and reflected on it, I thought it was perfect. It said, let's get our state together. The state had become so riddled with dissension. Rockefeller couldn't get anything done because he was a Republican and the Democrats totally controlled the legislature. And the people in the state were tired of the fighting. Rockefeller was not a gifted campaigner. He was a man who was ill at ease behind a microphone. He searched for words. His vocabulary, I'm sure, was adequate, but he couldn't find the word he wanted oftentimes. And he was very hesitant. And when he did say something negative, he'd always sort of smile because it didn't become him, and he didn't feel comfortable doing it. But getting back to the point, I can't think of a single time that fall where I felt that I was really threatened with a defeat.
Rockefeller tried to link bumpers with the old crowd, with the courthouse crowd, and with Faubus, but it just didn't really stick. And he called him, he's a candidate with a shoe shine and a smile.
It was quite obvious that Dale Bumpers was more than a shoe shine and a smile. There was substance to go along with it. He had the shoe shine, he had the smile, but there was some substance there also. And nobody who knew anything about Arkansas politics or who had voted in the last 50 years believed for a split second that Dale Bumpers was going to let the old guard take over again.
Dale Bumpers departed from the old personal style of Arkansas politics, which invested a lot in personal invective. He didn't believe in that. He, in fact, in that campaign and in every campaign afterward, declined to criticize his opponent, even in the vaguest terms.
Let's give him credit. Dale Bumpers ran a positive campaign, but then again, he didn't really have to run a negative campaign. It was obvious from the time he won the Democratic primary runoff, this guy was golden. There was nothing Win Rockefeller could throw at Dale Bumpers that was either true or would stick. I mean, he was Teflon. He was good to go.
A poll that of historians and political scientists toward the end of the century asked people to rank all of the governors of the century, of whether they were a great governor or near great, and to say something about why they ranked them that way. And Dale Bumpers was ranked as the only great governor of the 20th century.
The cultural paradigm, shifted substantially during the tenure of Dale Bumpers. He left after 4 years a government for Arkansas that was better, cleaner, more efficient, used taxpayer dollars more prudently, that was more mindful of its responsibilities to its own citizens in terms of social services, in terms of public education, in terms of higher education. It recognized the government, it recognized the changes in the political demographic in the state. It recognized that business as usual, the old what vestiges remained of the plantation mentality in the state were not going to survive and shouldn't survive. Those days were over. Dale Bumpers, 4 years, sealed their fate. There would be no turning back.